Hello and welcome to HQ Rio's first assignments training. We've done a number of virtual training events, but this will be the first one on this topic. We're glad you're here. We're watching the numbers go up and up and up. So let me go ahead and get going. So hopefully this is what you are interested in learning about, finding and applying for IMA positions. We are going to cover quite a bit of stuff today, so hold on to your hats. But so first, I just want to cover some rules of engagement. So this is a CVR live event. Microsoft Teams are CVR logins for Microsoft Teams, which I'm a big fan of, has this capability of doing a live event where you can see me and see my screen, but I can't see or hear you. And so everything is just one direction. It's a boy band. So you can talk to us, however, through a moderated Q&A chat. One of the cool things about a live event is as long as you do the settings correctly, it's accessible whether you have a CVR account or not. You can come to us on a smartphone, a tablet, a computer, laptop, and we can actually have up to 10,000 attendees. We're not there, but that's okay. It also automatically records. So if you have to bug out, or if you have friends who you want to show the training to later, the event will be accessible at the same link that you used to get here a little bit after the event is over. Let's talk a little bit about the Q&A chat and how it works. The first thing you may notice is that we've closed it. And the reason is that we want you to pay attention to the briefing. We very well may answer the questions that you have with these slides. And then you don't even need to do any typing. But and also I'm a glutton for attention, and I want you to pay attention to me. But at the end of the briefing, we will open the Q&A chat, and this is how it works. When you type a question, you will be able to see it, and we and I'll explain who we are in a minute. We will be able to see your question as well. If your question is one that we think a lot of attendees might have, we will publish the question and the answer to it. But sometimes you might have a question that really is more specific to your particular situation, and in that case, we will privately reply to you. So whether or not that question is seen by the other attendees is a decision our moderators make. What we do ask is that you stay in your lane, and our lane today, which is about IMA assignments. Periodically we hold, in fact, just 2 weeks ago, we held an IMA Q&A where it was no holds barred, and you could ask whatever you want. But today, the moderators that we have and the topic is about finding and applying for IMA assignments. So if you can kind of keep it there, we'd appreciate that. Here's the other thing. When you are looking at the Q&A, you can view all questions, or you can see your questions. So regardless of whether the answers and the questions that you've submitted and the replies that we've given you are public or private, you can see just your questions by toggling back and forth. If you have a follow-up to a question that we've replied to already, that My Questions section has a reply function so that you can reply back and it becomes a threaded conversation. Please use that, because if otherwise it'll come in and look to us like a brand new question, and we necessarily won't be able to see your names or anything like that unless you have your settings that way. So use that reply function so that we know what previous conversation we've had and that you're referring to. All right, so that's it for the ROEs. Hi, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Erin Carl. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for Headquarters Rio. We are the organization that pretty much oversees like the personnel and finance, career management, that kind of stuff for individual reservists, or what we call IRs, which are IMAs and some much smaller group of participating individual ready reserve, PIRR. So yeah, I'm the talking head, but I'm also an IMA. So one of the things that I have found so fun about doing these events is I've been an IMA or a TR since 2002. There are a lot of t-shirts that I've earned and wear that you probably earn and wear as well. But I'm also on Rio staff, so I can see sort of both sides of things and ask questions that a very typical IMA would answer, because I would actually consider myself a very typical IMA. We have a bevy of moderators standing by to answer your questions later on. Many of them are Headquarters Rio staff members. Oh, I left the RPO in there from the last one. Not RPO, but just staff members, deck commanders, superintendents, and some staff from Force Management. And we also have a couple members from the Kernels assignments group at REG standing by to answer questions as well. So what I will say is when we do get to the question and answer period, you know, we're at 130 some odd people right now. So depending on how many questions you throw in, just be patient. We promise we will get to them. We will not leave and end this session until we have, but you may need to give us a little bit of time. Okay, we're going to jump right in. I break the rules. I don't put the slide up where I tell you what I'm going to tell you. So the first thing we need to talk about is RMVS, which is the system online that for most of us puts forward the jobs and advertises them. That's where we can find out where IMA vacancies are. So the easiest way to get to RMVS, it's one of the AFPC secure apps, is to go into MyPERS, which MyPERS we use hopefully for a lot of things. MyPERS itself is great because we use it to submit, you know, paperwork, medical stuff. And if you're not familiar with the things that I'm talking about, then you need to go watch some of the prior training events that we've had on this. But we use MyPERS a lot. On the main page, there will be a link to the AFPC secure apps. You'll want to click on that and it pulls up a box similar to this one. Keep in mind that depending on your status and rank, what applications you see in this list may be different in a different, you know, you have more or fewer. But what you want to click there is the reserve vacancies, and then the vacancy system, which is right underneath that. And just so you know, though, once you get into, you can get into MyPERS without a cap, right? You can do a username and password. If you haven't set that up, please do so, because then you can use MyPERS on your phone. It's pretty cool. But to get into these, you do not only need to have a CAC, but it's going to probably be a lot easier if you use Desktop Anywhere or a government laptop. They work with just a reader and CAC. I have the best luck in Chrome or Edge, but for some systems that are not on a .mil network, I get myself into a loop, especially using virtual MPF. You'll click through and get there, and then all of a sudden it pops you back to here. I have found that when I use Desktop Anywhere to access these secure apps, that doesn't happen quite as much. So just a little tip or trick. All right, reserve vacancies. When you pull this up, you can pull up all the enlisted ones, all the officer ones, all the IMA, all the unit, and you know, you might want to look at all of them, both TR and IMA. This tool does not work, however, for AGR positions, Kernels positions, ARTS, Air National Guard, VLPAD, sorry, I got something in my eye, or PIRR. But if you are outside of any of those categories, the vacancies will be listed in the RMVS system. All right, the positions are sorted primarily by AFSC and then by the authorized grade. So you end up with a little grid kind of thing. Now you can toggle, you don't have to go back to like switch between IMA and TR. You can actually toggle from the vacancy type right there. So if you want to look at both IMA and TR, you can, or if you want to just look at IMA positions, you can do that too. It's not going to include, you know, lieutenants, and it's not going to include airmen. So what you will see advertised in RMVS for IMA positions will be limited to 03 and up and E5 and up. What I recommend from here is that you obviously want to take a look at the AFSCs for, you know, that you carry, but you can also take a look knowing that you can overgrade one up, one down. So for instance, if you are a tech sergeant in the 1X, but 1N, you know, 1N career field, if you look there on that chart for the an Intel NCO, there are 42 tech sergeant positions advertised. However, there are 60 master sergeants and 38 staff sergeants. So you can definitely look at one up, one down, and sometimes even two down, although that takes an extra approval to be hired if you are 2 ranks under the position's rank. But you might have a number of reasons to want to go one up or one down. Location or a particular command you want to work for. So you're not just limited to the rank in which you are that you're wearing at the time. Okay. All right. So, oh, I didn't even use my little cool circle that applied. So yeah, so that circle I have there shows what the tech sergeant could be looking at as far as trying to find the available jobs. And then when you click on that, it's going to show you the different positions. Now, when you pull up a position advertisement, this could be what you see. And I'm sure there are some heads nodding out there. So you will see the position number. You will see whether it's a 48 or 24 IDT job. You will see its location or installation, and whether it's a TR or an IMA. Here's what's important. That information is automatically fed into RMVS from MilPDS when our personnelists go in and take someone out of a position. So if you go into the system and you see a job listed that looks pretty empty, that doesn't have a position description or a POC, that's because the detachment members haven't gotten there yet to enter it. RMVS updates fairly often, and so it'll push these new positions in that are missing a lot of information, and then our people have to go in and check through them and see if they've been filled in, and if not, they have the position descriptions, and they will load in all the other information. And the point of contact is very important, because don't use the volunteer button. It doesn't work. Never, never, never for IMA jobs. We don't use that, and it doesn't do anything. So it's really important to read the POC and the position description to make sure that you contact the right person to get more information about the job. So if you see that and it's missing information, that's one of the reasons why, is that the detachment hasn't even gotten there to be able to add that information in, which has to be done manually. And another issue is that when RMVS updates, I've heard of weekly or every couple of weeks at least, a lot of times it will clear information that has been manually submitted. So our detachment staff they go in there and they put in the POC and the position description and all that kind of good stuff. And then 3 or 4 days later, it might update and dump it. And then they have to go back in. So keep in mind that it's not intentional that those job advertisements are missing information. That's just part of how that system works, and how our detachment staff are having to scramble and redo work all the time to keep them populated with the information that you need. Now, here's what you can do though, if you see a job at a location that you might be interested in and it doesn't have that information. You see, if it's a TR job, if you see an installation, right, because that's automatically populated when MilPDS pushes that over, well, then it's kind of easy to figure out who to call, right? I mean, if it says March Air Force Base, then you look and see what the reserve wing is there. And if you want to, if it's that Intel job, then you call the Intel shop, or you call the FSS or CSS at that wing and say, hey, can you tell me more about this position? And you give them the position number when you call force management or that job. For IMA positions, however, it's not that easy. So I want to give you a little bit of information that may help you know who to call to get that information, because the detachments oversee those positions, and the detachments and IMA positions are organized by the service command under which they fall for the most part. So if you are an IMA already and are well versed with how the detachments are broken apart, then you're certainly ahead of the game. But if you're not, or if you're like me and didn't even realize how the detachments were organized until you started working full-time for Rio, then you may not know what's going on. So how do you tell which detachment to call? So this is the detachment breakdown. So you get to learn something new today. So we have detachments 2 through 8. They are spread across from Hawaii which is Det 2, and then 3 through 7 are in the United States, and then 8 is in Germany. But if you look here, see, I thought they were done sort of geographically, but that's totally not the case. They're actually done by MAGCOM and COCOM for the most part. So if you take a look, if you have a job in PACAF, well, that's going to be a Detachment 2 managed position. If you are looking at something at AFMC, then you're going to call Detachment 4. This information is all over the place, and I'll tell you the places where you can get it. A couple things I want to point out. Detachment 5, which is at Robins Air Force Base in Georgia, Detachment 5 oversees what are called the centrally managed career fields. So that's the chaplaincy, legal, medical, and historian. So regardless of the MAGCOM or COCOM that job is assigned to, it will be managed by Det 5, no matter what. So if you are in either enlisted or officers in any of those centrally managed career fields, you will go directly to Det 5 to get more information. And in fact, I'll cover this later, but most of your jobs aren't even going to be in RMVS. They also cover Air Force Reserve Command and ARPC assigned IMAs like me. The other thing I want to point out is Detachment 7, which is headquartered at Bolling. They oversee cybercom. They oversee the mobilization assistants, those are our flag officers. And then OSI and Headquarters Air Force, and then also like the Joint Staff Agencies, the Air Force agencies. So there's a lot of stuff there. Again, not necessarily MAGCOM related. It's more about location to the National Capital Region for a lot of the jobs at Det 7. But here's the thing: if you can't figure out what detachment the job might be under just by looking at this, just pick one, make your best guess, because they'll be able to look up the position number when you give it to them, and they'll get you to the right people. Okay. All right. Now, once you know which detachment, this is how you can find out how to contact the detachment. So this is a screenshot out of our newly updated IR guide, and this information with the workflow emails and the phone numbers can be found in the IR guide. And that's page 12 of the IR guide. It can be found on the HQ Rio webpage. It can also be on the Rio Connect phone app. So if you don't have the phone app, even if you're not yet an IMA, if you're from another component, but you might be interested in it, download the phone app. You can go to the Play Store, Rio Connect. But a lot of that information is in there. Especially now, depending on location, some of us are still doing a lot of teleworking. In fact, I telecommute almost all the time. So you really are much better off to do things in writing and send your requests to the workflow email because they very well may not be in the office or be on skeleton staff with people rotating in from a telework situation. But the workflow email is everything comes into there and shoots out. So when in doubt, send an email. If you do call and no one picks up, leave a voicemail. They check the voicemails, but don't call and then hang up and then get mad because nobody called you back. It's not how that works. All right. Here are some other ways of finding positions. Almost all IMA positions can be overaged, and those overages are not advertised in RMVS. Remember, RMVS is fed by MilPDS. When a position empties, when the person's taken out of it, MilPDS sends that information to the vacancy system. But an overage that's not a spot. So it's a blank against a filled spot. So overages still have to be approved. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be able to overage a position, but a lot of positions can be. So the best thing that I can recommend to you, and honestly, a lot of the jobs that I've gotten this way, just pick up the phone. Okay, IMA positions are individually assigned to active component units. So I'm public affairs. So let's say, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Seymour Johnson is the closest base to me. The active duty unit, there's the 4th Fighter Wing. So I can call the 4th Fighter Wing Public Affairs Office and say, hi, this is who I am, and I'm just calling to find out if you have an upcoming vacancy for your IMA positions, or if there is space to overage against any of them for an appropriate rank for me. And they'll tell you. I will, a little caveat, some of the active component supervisors and commanders don't really know that they can overage positions. So you might have to educate them on that a little bit. But a lot of times it's just easiest to call and ask. I have also gotten jobs before by finding out via a phone call like that, that a position's not vacant now, but somebody's dropped retirement paperwork. So it'll be empty in 3 months. Well, there's nothing wrong with getting the ball rolling on that. So, you know, a phone call can help a lot, especially if you've got a particular location or, you know, a particular command that you want to work for, a particular kind of job. That's by far the easiest way to get your questions answered on that. So not everything is in the vacancy system. Sometimes you just have to call the unit. Another thing I would tell you is absolutely connect with other IMAs and reservists who are in your career field. Social media is a great way to do that. There are a lot of groups, especially on Facebook. You know, there's a public affairs reservist group, there are IMA groups, and all the time you'll see people going, hey, anybody know of any openings or overage opportunities at, you know, this location or that wing or this COCOM, whatever. That's a great way to just sort of network to see what might be coming open. Another option is to give a ring to your career field manager and see what they have going on, if they know of anything that might be happening that they can help you with. And you can also contact your detachment. I would try the other stuff first, just because the detachments serve a lot of people. But give them you know, if there's a particular COCOM, you know, if you really want to work for SOCOM, well, then you need to call Detachment 6 because they oversee all the SOCOM IMAs. And you can talk to them and say, hey, here's who I am. Do you know of anything coming open? So there are a lot of ways to do that. And then, of course, if you are JAG, medical, chaplain, historian, career fields, both officer and enlisted, you can always get DEP 5 a call because they have all the essay on that. But the career field managers for those centrally managed ones are going to be the most knowledgeable for sure. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the actual application process. But here's what I want you to be aware of. A lot of stuff is dependent on where you're coming from when you come into the IMA program. Things are a lot easier, for instance, if you are already an IMA or a TR. If you are interested in becoming an IMA, but you are active duty in any service, or active guard and reserve, an IRR, PIRR, arts or National Guard, Army or Air, then your system is different. And then for chiefs, colonels, and key and joint positions, you have different things to do as well. So we'll try and cover those one at a time. All right, this is a 1288. It is the form that is passed back and forth to move you from one job to another. So this is specifically if you are a current TR or an IMA. Not that you have been one, but what your status is right now. If you are currently a TR or you are currently an IMA, then what I'm about to say applies to you. So the first thing you need to do once you have found a job that you want is to complete this form 1288. Honestly, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you have questions, by all means, ask the DET. First off, I would look in the IR guide. There's a little bit about it in there, but it's not really difficult. It works a lot like a resume. So you're going to fill that out, and then your current commander, right? So if you're a TR, your commander there, or if you're an IMA, your active component commander has to sign the first endorsement saying, yes, this person can leave, okay? Now, the next step is to take that 1288 and email it to the force management people at the detachment. But here's a couple things that will help speed the process along. If you are a TR, when you submit this 1288 to the detachment that manages the position you want to move to, you want to include contact information for your TR units, FSS or CSS, particularly, no idea why somebody's requesting control, but particularly if you need to have a name and an email address. That's the best, because here's what happens. When the detachment gets that 1288 and takes care of the second endorsement, it has to go back to the losing unit, the TR unit, because they have to go into their system and create a loss order. If the detachment doesn't know who to send that to at your wing or the FSS or CSS at your losing TR unit, that could be something that takes time. So you can speed things along a lot when you email this in and say, hey, here's my 1288, my first endorsement is signed, and when you're ready to send it back to the unit, here's the name, rank, email address, phone number for the POC at my FSS or CSS who will take it for the third endorsement and the loss order. Okay. All right. So, but if you're a current IMA, you don't need to do that. If you're a current IMA, it's just a deal between the two detachments, the losing detachment and the gaining detachment. And that's obviously a much easier because we kind of know how to get in touch with each other. So you are going to send your 1288, email it into the gaining detachment with that information if you're coming from the TR, and they will take care of the second endorsement, okay? They're gonna, and then once they do that, then it goes back for the third endorsement, which is basically the third endorsement. The second endorsement is the yes, we'll take her or him, and the third endorsement is yes, we've exited them from the system. If you are legal, religious affairs, chaplains, historian, you are going to go through your functional manager, because with the RMVS medical, they use RMVS, and you can do the 1288. But all these other ones, everything's going to happen through your functional. So your stuff is different, even if you are a current TR or IMA. Okay. This process can take a month or two, and here's what I recommend. There are a couple little places in there, for instance, getting it back to the TR unit for that third endorsement. Or after the third endorsement is done, there are some things that have to happen at ARPC that are supposed to take about 15 days. But if it's been a couple of weeks and you haven't gotten an update, contact the detachment and ask for one. But there are a few wickets where you might have holidays, or there might be one person at ARPC that's supposed to put a single stamp and that person has been out. But stay on top of it. Don't be a pain, right? They're not going to give you a daily update. They have other things going on as well. But if it's been a couple of weeks and you really haven't heard anything, that might be a good time to ping that detachment to get an update on your 1288 going through. All right. Okay. Now, for everybody else, but not Kernels, not Kernels, Chiefs, or Key, but if you are coming to us from an active component of any kind, or from AGR, the IRR, Guard, ART, etc., it's a little bit different. And here's why. When you come to the IMA program, or the Air Force Reserve program, more specifically, from another component, you are considered a new accession for us. And that's why you can't just fill out the form and send it to a detachment. You have to go through a recruiter. Now, here's a couple of things that I want to impart on the whole reserve recruiter process. The first is you can't pick the recruiter you like. If you've got a friend of a friend 3 states away who happens to be a reserve recruiter, it's not like you can call that person and they can help you, okay? Because the recruiters are assigned to cover geographical areas. It's done usually by zip code. So if you go to afreserve.com, there's a little bit where you can put your information in for a reserve recruiter to contact you. That's how you find the one who's assigned to you. It's kind of reminds me a little bit, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like there's certain car dealerships where if you park in a certain spot, there's a certain salesman who gets to help you whether you like it or not. It's the same kind of idea, all right? So you need to contact the recruiter because the recruiters can see these positions as well through their system, and they will assist you with the completion of the 1288 and any other information that needs to be submitted, and they route it all through AFRIS, which is their computer system. Here's a couple of important things to know about that. The detachments do not have visibility in AFRIS. So once the detachments do their bit, sign their part of the 1288, and then it moves on to the next wicket, that's all happening in AFRIS and they can't see it. So it's really important that you keep in touch with your recruiter to make sure that that application is being routed through all of the wickets. And there are a lot more things to do to bring you in as a new accession than if we're just moving you from a TR or IMA slot to a different one. So this can take 2 to 3 months, and your recruiter is the person who can give you the updates on that. I actually was a staff officer for recruiting 100 years ago, and I can tell you the recruiters are assigned to flights with a flight chief. So if for whatever reason, if you have issues, hopefully you won't, because most of them are amazing men and women that really want to help put you in the right spot. But you know, that's the chain that you would use to try to get something fixed, because at the detachment level and the REO level, we can't see most of what's going on until you are completely gained at the end. Okay, so let's talk about chiefs. So there are key chief positions that are managed by the Chiefs Group up at REG. Those positions, remember when I said how MilPDS pushes information into the vacancy management system, but it's missing a lot? Well, that same thing happens for all Chiefs positions, but the difference is for the key positions, it'll just say, this is a key position, contact the Chiefs Group. But there's not going to be any other information. There won't be a position description or anything. If it's not a key Chiefs Group, the DETs will do the same thing as I said before and fill in the position description, and it works through the detachments the normal way. But the way the Chiefs Group gets their information out about open jobs with full position descriptions is that they send an email out every Friday with a listing of the open Chiefs jobs and position descriptions and information and POCs for all of them. That email is sent to the following people. It's sent to the key command or the KPL, okay, the key personnel list. It's sent to the list of people who were went through the command chief screening board, and it's sent to all of our detachment superintendents, so our DET chiefs. So if you are not amongst those 3 groups of people, this isn't an email you're going to get. Now, you can still see that the position exists by going into the RMVS system. You just won't be able to see all the information about it. So, but it will note that it's a key position and that you should contact the Chiefs Group. Anyone can apply for these key position groups, but if you are not on the KPL or the screening board list, you have to have an ETP to be hired for it. So if you see a position open in RMVS that says, hey, contact the Chiefs Group, contact the Chiefs Group. And you can also call, of course, just like the others, call the detachment to get more information on that job. But everything is done through the Chiefs Group for these key positions until they're hired. Yes, we've selected that person, and then it sort of jumps back into the regular routing system between the detachments and ARPC to finalize it. So it can take a couple of months. Same thing, just keep in contact with the people and make sure things are moving right along, but also understand that it can take a couple of weeks for things to move through each particular wicket. All right, key and joint. So there are some lieutenant colonel and some colonel, but that's taken care of by the Kernels group. We'll get to that in a minute. There are some lieutenant colonel positions that are listed on what's usually referred to as the KCJ, key, command, and joint. But for the IMA positions, we don't command. So there aren't going to be any IMA positions that fall under that category, but there are key and joint positions. And those are managed at ARPC by the KCJ group. They have term limits of 3 years for key positions and 4 for JDAL, which are the joint positions. Those vacancies will show in RMVS, and it'll say that it's a KCJ position in the job description. So, but what you need to know is that if you want to apply for one of these jobs, there's a special routing system for that through the KCJ office at ARPC. So if you go onto MyPERS and go into the upper search corner and type in KCJ vacancy, if you get to KCJ, it starts to autofill. And that's where you're going to get the information on how to apply and where to send it to, because they do that internal hiring and selection process. And again, you don't have to be on the list to apply for those jobs, but that's, they'll bless you for it, and then it'll join in with the other similar routing. So if you are a lieutenant colonel interested in a key or joint position, a lot of the information and specifics can be found on MyPERS by typing in KCJ vacancy. Really quick, I just want to tell you, if you are currently a PIRR and you want to come back into the full IMA program, that needs to go through a recruiter, because you're not funded, and you're coming into a reserve funded billet. But when a lot of times headquarters Rio, we use IMA and IR interchangeably, which really isn't accurate. IR, individual reservist, that's a way of talking about IMAs, and PIRR, the participating individual ready reserve, which is basically these two main categories of people. They mostly work for points only. That's the Air Force Academy Liaison Program and the Civil Air Patrol Program. I've listed the emails here if you want to get more information, and I'm just going to kind of leave it at that, because that's a whole other training. Okay. All right, let's talk about our kernels. They use a totally different system, and the 06 positions are not advertised in RMVS. So if you are a kernel select or a kernel looking for a position, you don't have to deal with getting stuck in the AFPC secure loop thing, because you don't need to go into RMVS. These are managed by REG, and I'm going to take you through real quick how to do this part. And keep in mind, probably 2 to 3 months, especially after the board results are released here soon. I know some people are kind of going like this. Then there'll be a surge, and it might take just a little longer because everybody's looking for jobs. All right, the first off is, how do you get to where you can see what the jobs are? What you want to do is go into the portal. This is a link here, and which will take you to the Reserve Senior Leader Management Office, Air Force REG. And you can also do a search for this in the portal, and it'll come up. Okay. All right. Oh, that's right. So honestly, you can copy and paste the link, but it's kind of hard to copy off a video screen. Am I right? So here's an easier way to get to it. If you go to MyPERS and type in REG, the predictive search will, about the fourth one down, you see right there, it says Air Force REG. All right, so if you click on that, it'll redirect you back to the portal. All right, so it'll take you to this page. And the first thing you want to do is drop down to number 6, which is the vacancy listing. And this is a spreadsheet that will, if you click on that little hyperlink where the arrow is pointing, the spreadsheet will come up, and it lists all the available kernels jobs, positions that are being advertised. Now, when the spreadsheet pulls up, the REG vacancy ID is hyperlinked, and that will open all the details about that particular job. So if you're interested in working at Fort Meade, then you can click on that REG vacancy ID to pull up more information about that position. Now, when you are interested in applying for a position, you're going to go back to that main portal page that you went to, and instead of number 6, which is where the vacancies are, now you're going to click number 1. That's the sample application package and frequently asked questions. So here's a list. I'm not going to get really into it, but a list of stuff that you need to apply for an 06 spot, and all of the rules and things you need to do to submit that application are right there on the Air Force portal. Just note, though, that if you're coming to us out of the Guard, that there is an additional requirement for you to do. And don't be the guy or girl putting 17 different PDF documents in one email to submit it, because don't do that. Put them all, scan them into one single PDF, or combine them if you've got Acrobat, and submit it that way and make everybody's life easier. I just want to put a plug in. So REG is actually planning a town hall that will go way more into the how to apply for an 06 job, but they're waiting for the 06 release, which is soon, we're hoping. So if you have any questions, there's an email address there at the bottom of the slide. You can certainly send to them, or, no reason you can't go poke around in the portal and look at their page and stuff right now. But when that town hall is set, as your Rio PAO, I will get the word out as best I can, and you can get a lot more of your questions answered there. It'll happen pretty soon. And here are some other, if you download and print the slides, some other contact information for the Kernels group and where to find the instructions for application and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so now we've applied. Now what? So there's a difference between being approved to move, being hired, if you will, and actually moving to the new job. So those 3 endorsements on the 1288, the second endorsement, once that's signed, you are thumbs up approved for that job. But there's a lot more that has to be done by our amazing personnel staff to get everything moved over and set right. So if you are an overage or an overgrade, and I'll talk more about that in case you're not aware, or if you are a key commander joint, there's going to be a statement of understanding that you need to sign. And then if you are coming to us out of a non-reserve component, basically if you're working through a recruiter, there's a lot more that ARPC has to do. So it takes longer. That's why, because there are more desks for it to cross and stamps for it to get. The effective date of the transfer, that date is agreed upon and it's on the 1288, and that's something that your gaining and losing commander work out between the 2 of them. So, let's say it's April and you're trying to move as fast as possible. Okay, so all right, well, we'll make the gain date 1 June. That gives it a month because your losing commander is okay with you leaving then, and your gaining commander wants you for a certain thing. Great, that gets put on the 1288, but that doesn't mean that the package will be processed by then. All right, there may be a lapse between the effective date and when the assignment process is complete, and you need to be aware of that. But here's what's important. Let's say you had a 1 June gain date on the 1288, but the package didn't get processed until mid-July. All right, something was weird. That gain date will be backdated to 1 June. So what that means for you is you will not have a break-in service, especially if you're coming to us out of a component or a different component. If you've got, sometimes this can affect, TRICARE issues and that kind of stuff. That backdate covers all of that. So just because it says 1 June doesn't mean you can plan on doing, your AT on 2 June. You don't want to do that, because if your package hasn't been processed, you're not going to be able to do that. But as far as a break-in service, if it's a thing that's going to affect your medical coverage, all of that will be taken care of by the backdating of the gain to the date that's on the 1288. But it just might take longer than that to process because of all the different offices things have to go through. So don't commit to doing IDTs or AT or orders with your new unit until after it's confirmed that you are officially gained and the package has been completely processed, even if that's after what the gain date is on the 1288. All right. You will know within a week or so that you have been officially gained, because you're going to receive a welcome package via a MyPers email from your gaining detachment. It has a lot of attachments and links and information, but it is vitally important, especially if you've never been an IMA before, to read through and do everything that welcome package tells you to do. It's going to affect your ability to get paid. It's going to affect your ability to request IDTs and orders, all of that stuff. So when you first, you need to make sure that you've got a good personal email in your MyPers profile so that you get an alert that you've got that MyPers message. And then it's not one of those things where you can just skim over this information. It's really, really important. And especially for those of you joining us out of another component, if you don't do everything that's in there, like with the pay file, you're going to have messed up pay. They need all that information to be able to pay you. It's a completely different pay file than you had as an active duty member. So a lot of really important stuff in that welcome package, but it's also a signal that you are now officially stamp, gained, approved, processed, done. Okay. Here are a few things to consider. First off, I want to talk to you a little bit, very briefly, about overages and overgrades. So an overage, as I mentioned before, there might be somebody sitting in that position, but they can put another person, you, up against that position, also funded by AFRC. paid for IDTs and AT. There's no difference. So that's what an overage is. So if you can imagine, there's like a little happy seat where that position exists. They can also put another person up against it. But there are certain things that you can do when you're in the position that you can't do when you're an overage. An overgrade is when there's a difference between rank and your rank and the rank of the position that you're in. You might be a lieutenant colonel, but be in a position that is for a major. You can do that, but you have to do a statement of understanding. It's only good for 2 years without an extension. And if that extension is not approved, you need to find a new job, or you will be moved to the IRR after 6 months. So you need to be aware of how being an overage or being an overgrade, because you can't be both, okay? Very important, you cannot be both. But it can affect things like your ability to promote, and when you promote, or for our enlisted members, they're eligible for STEP. There are a few other things that it can affect. So if you are applying for a position that will put you in a status of either being overgrade or overage, make sure that you fully understand by talking to your detachment's force management people how that could affect things coming up as far as, you know, promotions and eligibility for things. All right. Another thing I want you to consider, after you have submitted a correct and complete 1288 with the first endorsement, let me say it again, correct and complete with the first endorsement, I would wait about a week and then go check RMVS again if it's for an RMVS position. If the position is still there, you might want to check and make sure everything was received, because when they start processing that 1288 to gain you into that job, they're going to block that position and it won't show in RMVS anymore. So if it's still showing, something's weird. It might be worth a phone call or an email. And then, you know, for each little wicket that it has to go through every couple of weeks, if you haven't heard anything, just, you know, shoot an email or a phone call and ask for an update. There are about 8,000 IRs, and our detachments, if you look at the numbers, some of them service, you know, 300 or 400 members, and some of them service 1,700 members. That's a lot of people's careers and finance and personnel and all that stuff to manage. So, you know, we like to think that they're perfect, but they're not. Nobody is. I know I'm not. And if I owe whoever is watching an email from a couple days ago, I'm sorry, it's been busy. So just, you know, shoot an email or a phone call and ask for an update. And a lot of times that can clear up a lot of stuff. And also, though, make sure that you're accessible, that, again, you've got a good personal email in MyPers, so if they're trying to get in touch with you, they can. Check your emails, check your voicemails from unknown numbers during that time. Somebody may have a question, and if you're not getting back to them with the information they need, or if you're sending in paperwork that's incomplete, you're the one who's delaying the whole process. So it's definitely a partnership between you as the applicant and the staff of the detachment and the staff at ARPC. Also, if you have things like a higher tenure waiver that you need, or a mandatory separation date waiver that you need, if you're changing components coming in from the active duty or from another service, all of those things can lengthen the process, because there are just more things we have to do for you to get you moved into that job. So that's also something you need to be aware of. We wish it was a very, very fast process, but it's just not. Okay, woo, there we go. That's my briefing. So here's what's going to happen now. One of my moderators, her job is to magically turn on the question and answer. So that is about to open. There it goes. So I'm going to leave this slide up, and we are going to start answering questions. Let me point out a few things. The first is that I would really appreciate it if you would take a moment, and I will post it into the chat here as well, but there is a very quick Google Forms based survey that I would love for you to take. It should take you a minute and a half tops. I'll post it in the chat as well, or there's a bit.ly link. It's not going to work. Google Forms doesn't work on you know, Nipper, so you'll have to be off of VPN or outside of DA to be able to access it. So please do that. The QR code there is for the slides, or I did, okay, looks like the slide link is not working. It's a Dropbox, it should work, but I'll try to fix it once I stop going live. And then the other thing, so I'm going to just turn on some music here, and then we are going to start answering questions. I will leave this slide up for a couple of minutes with some tunes, and then I will stop the live feed. But we are not going anywhere, and the question and answer remains open. So don't worry about thinking that we're not going to answer your questions. I promise that we will, and I already see them flooding in. So just be patient with us. We will get your stuff answered. I'm gonna turn on my tunes here, and there we go. We'll get there. So yeah, so go ahead and post your questions. Remember to use that reply function if you have a follow-up, if you will. And if you need anything else after this, oh, I know the last thing I wanted to say. That link there at the bottom, that's the training page of the HQ Rio website. The link to this recording will be there, the slides will be there, and the link to the survey will be there. I don't know if it's up yet, but it will be by the end of the day for sure. So if you need to share this information with anybody, or if you want to go back and look at the slides or take the survey, it'll be a clickable link on that training page of the HQ Rio website. Whew, all right, so some tunes. We're going to start answering some questions, and I will get the slide link fixed for those of you who are having issues. Thank you.